What does the future of healthcare look like in the 21st century? We're at the INSEAD Alumni Healthcare Summit in Paris, and I'm joined by a man who has some of those answers for us. He is Roch Doliveux, and he's the CEO of UCB. Thank you very much for being with us today on INSEAD Knowledge.
Thanks for the opportunity.
You said in your speech here at the summit that the 21st century was the century of healthcare. What did you mean by that?
Well, with the aging of the population in Europe, in the US, in Japan, in China, clearly healthcare demand is going to increase, but also with new technologies. I really think that with the discovery of the genomes, we're on the verge of a new wave of discovery, very different than the one that we had in the 90s in healthcare. And the last one is people that live with diseases, so-called patients, have now access to information. And so the patient pool for healthcare, especially for baby boomers, but I would argue for everybody, is going to be much stronger even than what it is today. So for me, that clearly highlights very, very strong demand. Now, on the opposite side, clearly the cost of healthcare rising is not sustainable. So something will have to be done about that. And that's going to be the paradigm of the 21st centuries. And the winning companies are going to be the one that are able to both tap into that demand and at the same time clearly understand that what payers want is value for their euro or for their dollars or for their pound to make sure that we deliver value to the people that live with severe diseases.
What about emerging markets? You've said that even some industrialized countries like the US and the UK are emerging markets in their own way. What are some of the costs involved in providing healthcare for emerging markets?
Well, the issue of access to the best medicine is an issue, surprisingly, both in the so-called developed market and the so-called emerging market. I call them the so-called because you can't talk about China as the second largest economy in the world as emerging. I would say it has emerged already. So for me the key is everybody is rushing to this so-called emerging market because it's clear that it's predicted that high growth is going to come as economic growth goes. As economic growth happens, there is bound to be growth in healthcare. And everybody sees that and is going into there. This is just addressing a subpopulation of the people that live with severe diseases. I would argue that in the US, it's still the case, even with healthcare reform, not everybody has access. And in Europe, not everybody has access to the innovation or the best medicine. But it's clearly by an order of magnitude, you're talking about hundreds of millions of people that have zero access to healthcare. So my challenge really is as we develop as an industry, as everybody is rushing to the so-called emerging market for growth, this is only sustainable if we collectively do something about the one that has no access today. And this is not, even the biggest company in the world cannot find the answer by itself. So this is an answer that we will find collectively together, of course, with people that know each country extremely well, live in each country, very much like microfinance was discovered in the emerging world, for the emerging world.
Why is it important to provide health care to people who can't afford to pay for it?
Well, for two reasons. First of all, from a business reason, we're in the long-term business. Our cycles are extremely long, and so sustainable growth has to be part of our genes. And our growth in the emerging market is going to be sustainable only if we do something about the patient pool that has zero access to healthcare today. The other argument I would say is that I believe that winning companies are the ones that have a very clear sense of purpose and that shows extreme coherence with that sense of purpose in their decision making. In our business, clearly the sense of purpose is patients. It's about healing patients. It's about making people that live with severe diseases have a better life. And if we have that, we can't say, oh, it's just for you and it's not for your neighbor. So if we're driven, and we are driven by this patient-centric dimension, which every successful company is driven by their consumer. So we're not very different from other industries. It's just if we're driven by our consumers, we can't ignore from a sense of purpose the fact that we can't accept ethically, I would say, that we treat you and not treat your neighbor.
What's driving innovation these days?
It's both supply and demand. So there is clearly the patient dimension, so the people themselves and the stakeholders, the caregivers around the patients. And of course, there is also the scientists. And more and more, what's driving innovation is really the consortium approach, the partnership approach, the symbiosis approach, which make people building on their strengths and joining strengths to address specific issues. So innovation is now rarely done by one individual on their own or one group of individuals on their own. It's really more and more an open innovation model where it's the skills is the ability to collaborate, to work in symbiosis with people that can collectively then achieve a superior delivery in innovation.
Now, where does competition enter into this equation?
Well, I'm a veterinary surgeon by background, so I'm still, I'm interested in Darwin and the evolution of species. And it seems that successful species are the one that had shown both very strong ability to compete and very strong ability for symbiosis. And if you don't have both, if you're symbiosis only, you will not develop. But if you're competition only, eventually you extinguish. So it's the combination of both competition and symbiosis. It's not either or that makes species thrive. And so my argument is that in business, I don't see that differently. You need very strong competition, the sales, the commercial people fighting with the commercial people. But at the same time, the symbiosis on issues like emerging market, no company can find the answer on their own. Today we are going to one village in rural India to educate them on epilepsy, because it's, the way it's managed is absolutely terrible. It's just a drop of water in the ocean. But we are going there. If we are going there, we could talk also about diabetes or, tuberculosis or other disease, which is not our areas of strength, which we don't know. So this is a very simple example and probably not the best, but the ability also for certain topics to work in symbiosis is, for me, absolutely key. Both competition and symbiosis, not either or.
How does healthcare stack up against other industries?
Well, first of all, with the trends that we talked about on the 21st century, aging of the population, the new technologies, and et cetera, people say that in the 21st century it's going to be about green technology and it's going to be about healthcare. So I see a very bright future in healthcare, again with constraint like every other industry. But I would argue that every industry has to integrate price in their and value in their business model, and our industry is no different than the other industries. I think what makes us particularly well positioned is that we're an industry where there is a lot of unpredictability. Some things are 100% predictable, which are patent expiries, dates, 100% predictable. Lots of unpredictability on the rest. So we're used to a world where you can't predict and you have to adapt as we go. And I think this very much describes, post 2008, the world as it is, right? Everybody realized that, the portfolio of people that had a little money on the side in 2010 looks a little bit different than what they thought it would be in 2007. So that ability to adapt to change is key. So I really believe that our industry, in the healthcare industry in general, is very well positioned for the 21st century to win.
What is your focus today at UCB? And part of the reason I'm asking is because I noticed that you pulled out of the primary care sector in the US recently, and you pulled out of that sector in Europe about 2 years ago. So what are you focusing on and why?
At UCB, we focus on providing a solution to patients that suffer from severe diseases. So we are focused. We're a mid-sized company, although with 3 billion euros of revenues in our industry, we're mid-sized. So it's all about focus, and we decided to focus on severe diseases. Why severe diseases? Because high need. We have some unique technology that we believe we can provide superior solutions to patients that suffer from severe diseases. And also because in this growth of healthcare, the pressure on healthcare costs by governments and payers in general is going to rise, not decrease. So the ability to show clear value, and I'm talking about value being measured as what do I bring in terms of unmet medical need, what do I fulfill, and then what's the price, what's for that. So that were the key drivers in us focusing on severe diseases. And on top of that, by focusing on severe diseases, these diseases are mostly treated by specialist physicians, which is a smaller group, and so that enables us to focus more. That being said, we will have products that we'll discover that will have primary care application, and that's where the symbiosis comes in, and that's why we'll need very strong big pharma companies to team up with. But we won't do it ourselves.
What would you like to see INSEAD teaching its students today so that you would want to hire them? What did being at INSEAD mean to you?
First of all, I'm going to kill the debate that existed and was published in the Harvard Business Review of, can you teach management? I would not be who I am today without INSEAD. So, I was a veterinary surgeon. I had no idea what business was. It took me a week to understand what product meant. Because for me it was a product of what. So, INSEAD, like other business schools, is absolutely key for business education and for business in general. I think, INSEAD, like a company, needs to have the clear area of focus. There is a unique profile of diversity of background at INSEAD, which position INSEAD clearly as in a very unique way in today's world, which is a global world. The key is, that's a strength, that's not a strategy. So how do you build on that huge strength? INSEAD clearly will have to address what we talked about, which is the adaptability. Adaptive strategy is a key way of thinking. We have to have clear sense of purpose, think long term, deliver short term, and it's both. And so how do we adapt as things evolve? How do we shape change is a key driver. And the other one is clearly what we talked about for emerging market, is that there is a responsibility, coming back to the sense of purpose. Every company should have their own sense of purpose. My company is heal patients with severe diseases. And with that in mind, you don't stop just at return for shareholders, but you really do what is my sustainable growth dimension, which will provide not only return to shareholders next quarter, but return to shareholders over the long term. So that notion of being active in emerging market, being part of the solution in emerging market, being active in the green technology, being part of the solution around that are key areas.
Roch Doliveux, thank you very much for being with us on INSEAD Knowledge.
Thank you for your kindness.